A person enters a place of worship. They pause, remove their shoes, lower their head just slightly, and for a brief moment, everything slows down. The noise fades, the mind settles, the body becomes aware of where it is. Not because someone told them to, but because something in them recognized this is not ordinary. Now compare that to how we enter most places today. No pause, no shift, no awareness, just movement. We walk in while looking at a screen. We sit without noticing where we are. We move from one moment to another without any transition. And slowly, without realizing it, everything begins to feel the same. There was a time when certain things were not approached casually. A place was not just a place. A word was not just a word. A moment was not just another moment. There was a way of standing, a way of speaking, a way of being in the presence of something greater. Not necessarily something supernatural, but something that asked for attention. This was called reverence, not fear, not blind obedience, not superstition, but a quiet recognition that not everything is equal, that some things carry weight, that some moments ask more from us than others. And this recognition shaped how people lived. You could see it in the small, almost invisible ways. People lowered their voice when speaking to elders, not out of fear, but out of respect. Not because they were forced, but because they felt it mattered. A book was not thrown aside, it was held with care, sometimes even touched to the forehead. Not because the paper was special, but because knowledge was. A meal did not begin instantly. There was a pause, however brief, a moment of gratitude, a recognition that what we receive is not entirely in our control. Even in conversation, people waited before speaking. They listened, not to reply, but to receive. Silence was not awkward. It was part of the exchange. And you could see it in places of worship too. A pause at the entrance, a bowed head, a moment of stillness before stepping inside. Not because it was required, but because something felt different. The space asked for it. Even the body participated in this awareness. Standing, sitting, kneeling, each posture carried meaning. Each movement reflected attention. The body was not separate from the experience. It was part of it. Today, much of this still exists. The gestures remain. The forms are still there, but often only in appearance. The pause is missing. The awareness is fading. The meaning is thinning. We move through what is sacred the same way we move through everything else. And this is not limited to religion. We enter conversations without listening. We consume information without reflecting. We move through relationships without presence. We experience moments without absorbing them. Nothing feels set apart anymore. Everything is accessible. Everything is explainable. Everything is available at any time. And because of that, everything begins to feel equal. And yet something feels missing. Because reverence was never just about tradition. It was not about rituals for their own sake. It was a way of seeing the world. It was also a quiet awareness that we are not limitless, that there are boundaries we did not create, that not everything is within our control, that some things are greater than us, not in power but in meaning, and that forgetting this has consequences. When reverence disappears, something else takes its place. Not freedom, not clarity, but a subtle form of arrogance. The belief that we understand everything, that we can control everything, that nothing stands above us, that everything exists for our use, our consumption, and our interpretation. This is what earlier cultures called hubris. And hubris does not always appear loudly. It does not always look like pride. Sometimes it looks like indifference, like carelessness, like the inability to recognize value. And when that happens, the world becomes flatter. Not physically, but in how it is experienced. Nothing feels deeper than anything else. Moments pass, but they do not stay. Words are spoken, but they do not carry weight. Relationships exist, but they do not anchor us. Experiences happen, but they do not transform us. Because reverence creates depth. It creates a sense of distance, not to separate us from things, but to help us see them more clearly. When something is not immediately consumed, it is experienced more fully. Even the smallest gestures once carried meaning. Waiting before speaking, listening without interrupting, greeting someone with attention, putting something down carefully instead of casually. These were not just manners. They were quiet forms of reverence. They were ways of saying without words, this matters. When something is held with care, it becomes meaningful. When everything is treated the same, meaning dissolves. Because rituals without meaning become empty, and meaning without form slowly disappears. Modern life has made everything easier. Access is instant. Information is endless. Boundaries are minimal. We can reach anything, anytime from anywhere. But in removing distance, we may have also removed something else. The ability to pause, to recognize, to approach with care. We have reduced the gap between ourselves and everything around us. But in doing so, we may have reduced the depth of our experience. Reverence is not about going backward. It is not about returning to old forms without understanding them. It is not about forcing rituals into modern life. It is about recovering a way of seeing, a way of noticing that some things are not meant to be rushed, not meant to be consumed, not meant to be reduced to quick understanding. They are meant to be approached, slowly, quietly, with attention, because not everything in life is equal. Some things ask more from us. A conversation, a relationship, a moment of silence, a place, a piece of knowledge, a human being. And in giving that attention, we receive something in return: depth, meaning, connection. Perhaps what we are losing is not just time, not just attention, not just focus. Perhaps it is reverence, that quiet pause before something important. That awareness that says this matters. That feeling that something is worth approaching differently. And maybe nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be invented. Only remembered. Because reverence is not gone. It is still there, but it is no longer practiced. And it begins with something very simple: attention. Noticing what we usually ignore. A sunrise you do not photograph. A conversation you do not interrupt. A moment you do not rush through. A person you truly listen to. Because reverence does not need to be created. It only needs to be noticed.